Well, you know, Mary, in that you just said something I hadn't realized before, and that was that the United States had regions also.
That's right.
And could you expand on that a little as to what happened between having the regions and now no longer having regions? Or is that correct? Are there no longer regions?
We do no longer have regions. We had regions, originally seven. Puerto Rico is the seventh. At one point, they were reduced in size. And in 2001, we did away with regional governance. Because our numbers got smaller, it allowed us to reduce the size of the council. There's still mixed reviews on that. Obviously, when there's regional governance, I think the sisters are able to get more time and attention from council members because there was a council member designated for each region who was the contact person for those sisters, and she was their go-to person. Now your contact person might vary. You might go to one person for health or retirement needs, and while every sister has a sister who would be, in a sense, their canonical superior, you might go to someplace else for study needs. You might go, so it diversifies it, and also the sisters have assumed more responsibility on themselves as
Hmm.
we moved into this.
Could you just clue us into numbers as to how many are currently in Amityville Dominicans and how many approximately you had in these U.S. regions?
Uh, in the individual regions, the thought was to keep them at about 125. Right now, the congregation is about 550 in size. There's a little over 30 sisters who are in Puerto Rico, plus we have two sisters in the Dominican Republic, sisters in a variety of places. So clearly, to reduce the number of council from 9, which is what we were, to 6, makes a big difference on the sisters. But a part of that was an economic concern. Part of it was that there were fewer needs of people going to school. There were definitely more needs in terms of aging, retirement, healthcare. And so it was to kind of make sure that those areas got highlighted more. I think you'll find sisters have different opinions as to whether or not, as to the success of this.
Well, I'm
As
trying to
we always
absorb this difference. Okay, so you had the regions, and then when you had regions, and I remember when you had 9 on
Yes.
the council, and we had regional superiors. You talked about. I don't know. It never clicked that those were regions. So
That's right.
all right. So right now the time of moving from the regional structure in the U.S. to full with the congregational council, would you say you're still in transition, or has the transition been completed?
Parts of the transition have been completed. Some folks are still in transition. Sometimes we're still in transition depending upon perhaps how heavily we leaned on the earlier structure. I think, the sisters really are doing fine. Every local houses are connected with a particular person on council, and they have choice in requesting that person. So 4 of the council members relate to X number of houses, again with some attempt to try to keep that steady. As you might imagine, that would vary. If you have a large community, a sister could have fewer houses to relate to, but the same number of people. If you have a series, as we do have a growing number of smaller communities, then that obviously means a whole set of different settings that any individual might need to respond to in one way or another.
You know, that is something that we experience in a way with the visitation process and who the visitator is for a local community for the year.
That's right.
And that is a member of the congregational council. So
Right.
we can connect with that understanding.
Correct.
So good. Okay. What would you see, Mary, from your experience now of the strength of the governance structure, of the structure part that you currently have? And then what about the challenges? You've sort of hinted at
You
them.
mean specifically with Puerto Rico?
Specifically with no regions in the United States. What are the challenges in that structure, and what would be the positive aspects of it, since you've experienced both?
The challenges are, I think, Regional government was a very good way as we continued to move with the changes of Vatican II, going from perhaps where the direction in any sister's life was much more top-down, moving to areas where sisters were assuming more responsibility for themselves. So that the regional it was very clear who the point person was. It becomes particularly difficult, as with all things, during times of change, when you have to put out, even before new leadership comes in, who do you go to if you need something. But a lot of the health needs, health and retirement, are funneled through a person, a council member who is charged specifically with that area of concern. Other areas would be finances, obviously, are an area. So it might mean that sisters are relating to more than one person at the council simultaneously, usually with the concept that whoever the sister is, who is technically the canonical superior for that house, their council member, that she is in the know and might help to coordinate that. It has required the sisters to do more on their own. I think most of the sisters have done that very well. Let me use a simple example. In the past, if a sister needed to be hospitalized, one could always count on a regional being there to go visit the sister in the hospital, perhaps fulfill that need to respond to whatever she needed, keep communicating with the house, and so on. It's as the size of the council becomes smaller, sisters can't rely on any one person to do that. What they've stepped up to beautifully is making sure that sisters get visits from each other. And if the community is small, they do that for each other. I'm thinking of one grouping of sisters in Brooklyn where it's a series of smaller groupings. They have taken the they've each shared with each other their house keys, so that if someone gets sick or anything, anyone in that group can go to her house, get what she needs, bring it to a hospital. So what it has inculcated, I think, in the best sense, when it works really well, is a greater sense of trust and interdependence among the sisters, and perhaps a little less reliance on a council member to do things that in all truth we could do for each other.